my phone. That's like the cowbell that tells us that we're alive. Right?
First time for everything. I love it.
That's amazing. Hey, we are live, folks.
Joe Bergamini coming to you, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Sabian Education Network Friday live broadcast. Oh man, that was just too great. Welcome. It's been a great series of Fridays with wonderful artists joining us every week. And this week, we're really in for a nice, fun, informative, inspiring hour. We have one of the oldest friends of the Sabian Education Network coming to us live from Nashville, Tennessee. Drummer and band leader for Rascal Flatts, playing all the biggest venues across America. He's got a legendary book called Survival Guide for the Modern Drummer. So, toured and recorded with many, many other artists. Now teaching at Belmont University and also with a thriving private teaching practice. Runs his own business called the Drum Dojo, which he has big plans for coming up, which we'll talk about. He's performed at the Modern Drummer Festival as an eminent clinician and a good friend of mine, an all-around great guy, and a longtime friend of Sabian and the Sabian Education Network. I need to welcome Mr. Jim Riley. Hi, Jim.
Man, that's quite an introduction, Joe. I appreciate that.
Okay, man. I didn't even rehearse that.
Yeah.
So thanks, Jim. I appreciate you coming on with us today.
Absolutely.
And welcome, everybody, all of our usual SEN friends. Hey, guys, welcome. Come on in on YouTube and Facebook. Please feel free to type in your comments and your questions. I'll take as many of them as I can, and we'll have some fun. So Jim, let's dive right in. You were on with me at least once before, and we got into a little bit of your history as a player. So if you guys viewing have questions about that, feel free to ask. But I actually want to just dive in more to your current activities, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Awesome. So let's start here. You were gonna go out with Rascal Flatts, but now obviously we're all dealing with things not happening. So what's how has it been, moving forward from that?
Yeah. So this was going to be a very interesting year for Rascal Flatts. For various reasons within the world of the three guys, Jay, Gary, and Joe Don, they had decided to make 2020 a quite legitimate farewell tour. Mm-hmm. So this was going to be a very massive blowout of a tour. We did a couple early dates the first week of March that weren't necessarily part of the big tour. They were more of a holdover from the last tour. And the last of which was at one of the casinos up in Niagara Falls. And after that, dates started getting canceled, dates started getting postponed. And all of a sudden we went from we're going on a big farewell tour to we're shut down. Mm-hmm. And, it certainly surprising. But if I look at it in the bigger picture, this was my 20th year with Rascal Flatts. So at some point, I started to realize that it's going to end somehow, some way, eventually. So I started living my life a couple of years ago in a way where I was almost thinking like Rascal Flatts, like financially in my life didn't exist. Mm-hmm. Fortunately, there's so many other things that I love in addition to playing live, on those big shows. I've always loved teaching. So I've continued into all of my teaching endeavors. I started doing the drum camps that I have here. I started to expand my online teaching. And this was 4 years ago. And I started getting into home recording, which is actually what I was doing this morning before I started these interviews that I was doing today. So for me, my plate is very full between, the online teaching I do, the in-person teaching I do. I have a program where I teach kids from 6 through 12 in small groups, which I'm actually doing live right now. Okay. The Drum Dojo camps are on hold. So that's it. I'm just doing a lot of teaching and I'm doing a lot of recording and also just kind of working on some stuff, preparing for the future. But it's been fine. I mean, at one point I missed the guys. I miss the whole group that we toured with. But at the same time, I'd be lying if I didn't say that not touring this summer for the first time in like 22 years has been pretty good.
Yeah, that's a funny, a lot of our viewers, the touring I did wasn't at the scale of Rascal Flatts, but I was on the road a lot last year too. And
Yeah, you were.
we realized that like this is a goal for many people, and we're very fortunate and thankful to be able to do it. So, sometimes people hear you say, "Oh, it's nice to be home," they're like, "Oh, but it is nice when you have a family to be home." But on the other hand, so like, do you think you're the kind of player, like, because I know how much you love teaching, and that's part of why you're here, and I love it too. Do you think that like there's a certain amount of time that you'll be like, I just got, I want to get out there and gig, maybe even if it's not as big as what I was doing before, like
Yeah, so I've always said this, and now I have to, prove it with my actions, but I've always said that I've never gauged my own success on the fact that, I've been on the cover of Modern Drummer, or I've won an award, or I played on a platinum record or a #1 hit single. I mean, those weren't the things that I went, that's why you're success. For me, I always gauged my success on the fact that I do what I love for a living, and I'm able to support my family comfortably, and it makes me happy. And anybody that can do that, in my mind, is just as successful as I am. Mm-hmm. And so now it's like, yeah, the truth is, I mean, it doesn't have to be, I mean, that's like a super high elite, kind of gig that I've been doing gigs like that, for the last, 22 years. I'm okay with not doing it right now. I may be okay with not doing it, indefinitely. I mean, if the Rascal Flatts thing, which is certainly complicated because there was, it seemed like there was some sort of thing with the three guys that compelled them to want to not do this. So I'm hoping that whatever that was, that they look at this time that they spent in the pandemic, and they go, man, not playing is awful. And maybe they'll kind of reconsider whatever was going on there. And who knows, maybe in 2022, maybe we'll be back out on the road.
Yeah. Well, I hope so, man. I hope so. And I'm sure whatever, it's definitely, this thing has brought home the love of playing live, when it's taken away. So I just get back out there. But in a wonderful, I don't know if it was planned, but in what seems to me like a wonderful turn of events, you're now teaching at Belmont University, right?
Yeah. And it was very interesting timing. I mean, if they'd come to me a couple of years ago and, said, you want to teach at Belmont, I'd say, do I want to? Yes. Do I have time? Probably not. But the call from Belmont came literally right, probably maybe a week after I got the call from Rascal Flatts saying, we have to shut it down. That's shutting everything down.
That's like someone watching out for you type of stuff right there.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Thank you. So it was, there's been some really great people that have done that job over there. Zorro did it over there. Our good friend Chester Thompson was over there for 20 years. And he retired from there a couple years ago. And so this year there ended up being an opening, and they asked me if I'd be interested. But I know that they asked several other people if they were interested as well. So I had to go through an interview process. I had to go through, putting a resume together and, writing some essays. And so it was pretty interesting. I just had to go at it like, okay, I'm applying for a new job.
Yeah.
And so they ended up hiring me. And the first 3 weeks we did were online. And then now I've been over there for about 4 or 5 weeks doing it in person in a large room. And I'm teaching private lessons. So we're in a very large classroom with 2 drum sets.
Oh, that's good.
And I've just got 2 sets of headphones with a really long extension cord in between them. Nice. And it's been working great.
And so have you been able to create sort of a program or curriculum, or are you teaching something pre-existing?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I one of the reasons I always thought that that would be a great gig is because it's a true commercial music program. I mean, for those of you who don't know, I'm not trying to sell everyone in Belmont today, but it is great university. The interesting thing about it is it's right at the end of Music Row. Like you go down Music Row and you run into Belmont University. So it couldn't be any closer to the music business. That being said, they have a very hip commercial music program, and it's their goal to have people that are real professionals teaching there. And so they want people that have certainly walked the walk that can also, do the teaching as well. So as a result, they understand that I know that I've got to get everybody from point A to point B, but they also understand that they're hiring me because I have a certain perspective. So they're actually totally cool with me using the materials that I want to use. And so, it's funny, like these are always going back and forth between my backpack and my stand here. But it's like I'm literally using these 3 books, 2 of which people will recognize: Survival Guide and let's see, I'm doing backwards, Song Charting. And this is a new book that's coming out at the end of the year. You can see it says early edition. So this was like one I literally printed 50 of these just to use with my Belmont student and some of my private students, just to beta test it. And I'm not done with some of the content that's going to be there, but it's great. I mean, I literally made sure to finish this up in time for the semester, so I would have it in my curriculum, because it's sort of the other half of what Survival Guide, which is all about grooves. Improvisational Tools for the Modern Drummer is all about language around the kit. So it's just kind of the flip side of it. And
Nice.
So I've been teaching out of those books, and it's been great. The biggest adjustment is just adjusting to a 25-minute lesson.
Oh.
I'm used to teaching 1-hour lessons.
Right.
So going 25 and trying to get a lot of material in, it's a different mindset, and it's taken me a couple weeks to get there. But I think
Right.
I'm pretty close.
Oh, I'm sure I know you. First of all, you saw it here first, folks. Don't forget, on the SEN interview, you see the new books that come.
That is the first time it's been seen there. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Jim, weren't you with me at the SEN event we did at Belmont before you were teaching? Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So Belmont's like the first place we set up, and someday again, when we're allowed to travel and stuff, we'll do another SEN event there. And Todd London was great, and and Dorico was a great. I was really blown away by the whole facility, the university, and everything.
Yeah, and Dorico is the one. Dorico has moved away from Nashville, and so it was Dorico Watson, great drummer. It was his spot that when he left, that was opened up, and that left me an availability. And I can't help but think that my appearance at the Sabian Educational Network, helped my standing with the folks at Belmont. So
That's great. Well, we'll discuss kickback after the call.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's interesting, is there any different dynamic? I always wondered. I only adjunct at a college one time, and I was like, a couple students had asked for me, and it was a small school. Is there any difference in the dynamic? Like, if you're the professor there, like my son has some professors that he didn't opt into. They're just the teacher for the semester. So is that happening? Like, are you getting maybe some students who don't know you that well, or just kind of checking out different professors there?
I really don't know. Most of these college kids are so quiet and respectful, and they do their work. I really don't know how much they know about me. It's the same when I have kids here. I mean, they may know tons about me, and they may know nothing about me, but I'm sure there's some people that are excited that I'm there and that will want to seek me out as their instructor. And maybe some of these kids did that. And then I know that some of these kids were probably just assigned a lesson teacher, and that was me. So
Wow.
I think it's probably a combination thereof. But I know that the university's pretty happy to have someone who is equally accomplished as a player and as an educator. I think those are the kind of people that they love to have, and
Cool.
so I'm super honored that they asked me, and I'm trying to do the best job that I can and continuing to get better at it.
That's awesome. Well, you're very humble, but obviously it's like someone who's been out, touring with one of the biggest acts in musical directing and everything. I mean, you're doing what the students want to do. So
Right.
And I think that's says a lot about the school that they would bring you in to do that. That's funny though. That's a very honest and interesting point, because like I have a new student. He's like 10, right? And his parents got recommended me. I was doing a gig, and they're like, "Oh, Joe's a guy. He teaches a lot. Like he's a lot of the guys who do this gig don't, but Joe teaches." So, and the student, I quickly realized like they know nothing about me except that, in this case, Michael Cavanaugh recommended me as a teacher or one of his people.
Yeah,
So,
and even with these kids, I mean, the music business moves so fast that if some kid wasn't, I mean, some of these kids I'm teaching are 11 years old, so if Rascal Flatts wasn't as big for like the last 4 years as they were the previous 16 or something, some of these, the parents are all duly impressed.
yeah.
An 11-year-old kid may not be. And then I think, it'll probably end up being one of those things later where they'll go, "Well, I didn't really realize exactly who that guy was when I was taking lessons with him,"
That's what I was getting to. Like you have such a great demeanor, and like when you get those students, like what really matters is how you treat them. Like they start to like you, and they start to like the flow, and then you're like, "Oh, by the way, I was doing this," and you show them a video, and then they're like, "Wow, my teacher does all this cool stuff," but none of that matters if you don't treat them with respect.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important thing for all of us here at Sabian Educational Network to realize is, when I have some sort of notoriety, that might help get my foot in the door of certain things. But if I don't do the work, if I'm not a great teacher, they're going to be tired of that, Jim, he played with so-and-so, kind of thing. I mean, you have to deliver the goods. So whatever you do to get the student, that's just the first step. Keeping the student, is really the task. And I mean, I pride myself on getting kids in the 6th grade and keeping them to the 12th grade and sending them off to college.
I've always thought, and look, this is, what is, disclaimer, the opinion of the speaker is not that of Sabian. This is just me, like I've always thought that, I've always been impressed with that about you. Like, to me, that you still have younger students when you've been on the cover of Modern. There's very few people on the cover of Modern Drummer who think that they want to teach a young child. I think teaching a young child is just as difficult as teaching an advanced player.
I think in some ways it's more. In some ways it's more because, and I've often said this about band directors, and you and I both know some band directors. I think that being a middle school director is way harder than being a high school director, because if you're a middle school band director, you have to play clarinet, you have to play trumpet, you have to play trombone, you have to remember how to do all this stuff. You're showing these kids and modeling how to do it. That's extremely difficult. Yeah. So in our world with the drumming, we are setting these kids up for the rest of their life. What they're going to learn from us in the next 6 weeks, 6 months, like the mechanics of how their hands work, that stuff's going to be sticking with them for the rest of their life. It's a big responsibility. And the truth is, Joe, I had to figure out deliberate ways to do this because I wanted to do it. I mean, I had adult students. I had to create a way for me to be able to afford time-wise, financially, everything, to be able to teach kids. And so my solution for it, and you've seen my room before. I'll kind of, and I've got Derek here from Belmont who's actually observing. So if you see a random person in the room, he's
cool.
He's observing for part of his graduate student degree.
Hey,
But
Derek, we're going to make you famous, buddy.
yeah, there he is. He's hanging. So, but with the room here, I've got 6 kits, and it's set up so that I can teach kids in a group lesson.
Mm-hmm.
And the group lesson for me is a really great dynamic because number one, it turns what we're doing now into a social activity, which is great for the kids. So it's no longer, I got to go, with this guy and I'm doing this thing. Now it's that they're actually going to see some kids their age. They're going to be able to talk a little bit before and after and, a little bit of interaction there. But there's also the idea that if a kid sees another kid do something, they can realize, wow, if they can do it, I can do it too.
Right.
And so there's a really great synergy that happens there. And from a financial standpoint as an educator, which let's face it, that's what we're doing here. That's what we're talking about. Right. I'm just going to, other people, maybe they don't do this. Maybe this is taboo, but I feel like we're in a group together here and we're talking about like the real part of being an educator. So I'm just going to tell you where I'm at. So my lesson rate is $100. I know there's some people that are far more, and there's certainly a lot of people that are far less. But I tell you that to say that my private lesson rate is $100 an hour. But when I do my group lessons with the kids only pay $25 for an hour. So if you compare that to, the other person that's teaching at the local music store, they might be charging $25 or $30 for a half hour.
Right.
And so for me to compete, I'm in the same price range as someone who's offering a half hour lesson. But my reasoning is that as drummers and percussionists, I think we need more time. I want to work on fundamentals. I want to work on keyboard because I want them to be successful at school and I want them to be a more well-rounded musician. And when I say keyboard, I'm talking about marimba and xylophone. And then thirdly, we're going to do drum sets. So we basically do 20 minutes snare drum every lesson, 20 minutes on marimba and 20 minutes on drum set. And that way I can help my students be more well-rounded and offer them a 1 hour well-rounded educational experience for the same price that someone's offering them a half hour on maybe just one thing, which might be drum set. Mm-hmm. And I say this all in an effort to, I think there's a one question that everybody's always wondering, at Sabian Educational Network and other places where teachers talk, how do you get students, And one of the places that you can get students is by making contact with your local middle school. Mm-hmm. and gaining the trust of the middle school director and showing them that you are going to essentially help make their program better. Because 99%, they're probably a sax player or a trumpet player, and they're so happy to have someone that's a drummer and a percussionist that wants to help. Mm-hmm. And do some people think it's an odd thing that's like, this guy that's, played on #1 hit records and played on, been on the cover of Modern Drummer wants to teach kids. It's just my passion. I just love teaching. And so I find ways to make it work. So I feel like financially I can make it work that way. Because if I have 5 kids in a room, that's $125 an hour. That's actually better than my lesson rate. Right. And so, so it's a win-win for everybody. And, and I get to teach the kids that I want to teach. And the truth about the Belmont job was I spend a lot of time with kids. I spend a lot of time with hobbyists. I spend a lot of time with professionals. The one group I don't spend a lot of time with up till this year is college kids because they're always studying with their college professors. So that was a great opportunity for me to get in there and be involved in their lives. That's great. Here's a nice comment. Jim's a great teacher and mentor. He helped my son become a well-rounded drummer and percussionist. Yeah. Carmelo is a great kid, and he's actually a really great drummer, and I'm sure we'll work together some more. He lives up in I believe he's in Quebec, Canada. but really, he came to my camp about 3 years ago, and he was a little kid, and now I see him, and he looks like a young little dude with like long hair, and I'm like, man, you're growing up. It's fun.
Teaching question about that. And that's wonderful comment. So in the classes, like when you have young students, right? You obviously they're paying money. You want them to practice and stuff. We all talk about the days of like, some of the teachers we had back in the day, a little bit more taskmasterish, like you're going to play the pad for 2 years. Don't even think about playing that drum set and like coming down. Did you practice a half hour a day? Like, how do you, how much do you demand practice from a younger kid without turning them off? And I think maybe in your case, does the competition between the kids in the class solve some of that on its own?
It definitely helps. So I break my year up into two basic halves. I have the fall semester and I have the spring semester. In the fall semester, I'm usually dealing with a lot of these kids are dealing with some honor band auditions. So I can use some of the music to help motivate them to practice. And then when they end up making it, there's a sense of pride and a sense of accomplishment there that carries into the spring semester where we're not doing that as much. I try to tell them, be realistic. If you could give me 20 minutes, but you could do that, 6 days a week, 5 days a week. If you could give me 20 minutes, you're going to see a lot. But to be honest, and we know this, the kids that are going to be really great at this, they don't need to be told. They need to be told to get off of their drum set. Because I know a couple of those people, you and me, they had to tell us to get out of our rooms and come down to dinner or go to bed, because we wanted to play the whole time.
Yeah, that's great. Well, another thing that I always liked is you've created, like some other great teachers, you've not only loved the teaching, but you've created a business, the Drum Dojo. You even have a name for it. We talked about it in a previous SEN interview. So now with the pandemic, have you gone online with a lot of this? And do you have any future plans with the Drum Dojo in terms of online private or other teaching?
Yeah, so initially this place just started out as a place for me to teach, my lessons that I wanted to do, the group lessons with the kids and the private lessons. And I think as, like my good friend Rich Redmond, he started doing the camps, and then I worked at his camp for him. I did some teaching there, and he said, next year you're going to be doing a camp. I said, no. But the year after that, I was like, yeah, so camp, maybe camp. But I said, with Rich, we know Rich does everything big. Everything's big with Rich, right? For me, I wanted to try to do something that was a little smaller. So I did, I do these smaller camps with, like 7 people at it. And so I can work with everybody a little bit closer. And, for the last 3 years, I was doing these camps. The other thing I was getting into a lot of, which I really recommend for a lot of reasons, is I've got a recording rig and I've been recording myself. I do that professionally. I've done probably 350 tracks in the last 3 years for clients around the globe. I mean, literally around the earth, and which is amazing. But, when the pandemic hit, like, everything that I was doing in person, the camps, the lessons in person, all of that stuff, had to go away. So fortunately, like some of us have, I already had an infrastructure in place with students to be teaching online. So I continued online with that. And I think this pandemic has caused a lot of us to look at what we're doing, and, it's kind of accelerated some of the thoughts that we had. We all know that a lot of things in this world are going digital. And so, a decision that I've made, and this is another, kind of, you heard it first kind of thing, is that in 2021, I'm going to be opening up a Drum Dojo Academy online. Mm-hmm. So similar to like our good friend Dave Weckel, who has a site, and Stanton, mm-hmm. and different people like that have a passion for teaching, I think it's a great opportunity to be able to reach people around the globe that want to get better, but they understand, the perspective that I have, that I'm really all about fundamentals. I'm really all about doing simple things really, really, really well. And it makes the concepts that I want to teach you very, very attainable. It's not superhuman drumming stuff. It's regular human drumming stuff done really, really well. Right. And so I've just always thought, of course, it's going to be fun to be able to connect with people on this Drum Dojo academy that I'm doing. But I've also thought, like, how cool would it be if we had like just hours and hours of archive of like Ted Reed, like teaching, or George Lawrence Stone teaching. Yeah.
Whoever.
If we just had hours of that in an organized way. So in a way, I think about it as also like the books. It's another way to preserve the teaching that I'm doing for now and for all time. In 100 years, maybe someone will be looking at this. This is a pretty good lesson. Check this out.
Well, what's cool?
His hair and his clothes are really funny, but it's a good lesson.
It is true. It really is uncanny how everything is, even all these interviews, this interview will be preserved for as long as there's a YouTube, it'll be up there, and as long as there's a Sabian. But what was my train of thought? Oh, so the cool thing is that it doesn't preclude any of the private study that you could be doing. You can subscribe to a site like Stanton's, like yours, and it can actually be like just fun, extra supplemental material. Like, you can still take private lessons. It doesn't have to.
Absolutely. We're in a subscription-based society. Everybody's either got, correct me if I'm wrong. Everybody listening here has either Netflix or Hulu or Apple TV, or probably has all three of them and a couple that I'm not mentioning, Amazon Prime, and so we're in a subscription-based society. The cool thing is to have an archive of the things that I feel is truly important. And for one of my students to be able to go, oh, I want to look up that lesson. It makes it a lot easier than, I don't know, like I'm a fan of YouTube, but it becomes so massive and there's so much out there that it's great to have some places where you can have a more focused search for what you're looking for. And that's what I'll be doing. I'll be putting together, tutorials based on my 3 books and some other materials, to try to crystallize the ideas that I'm trying to advance with people to ultimately help them become a better musician behind the drum set.
Well, that's great. I think one of the things that you hit the nail on the head is that one of the issues with YouTube when it comes to education, and not just for drums, is like it's hard sometimes to qualify who's delivering the education. Mm-hmm. So, even if I was trying to build a gate on my deck, like the first schmo I watched.
Oh, yeah, totally.
But so with, if that someone like yourself has a long track record of not only the performance stuff, but the education stuff and teaching, it gives you, it's like, you're going to get quality education if you go on Stanton's site or on your site.
If you go on Dave's site, you're going to, Dave's got some special sauce that nobody's got, and you want to go there because that's what Dave's going to deliver to you.
Yeah, totally.
And, you're going to go, Stanton, my gosh, Stanton's just Stanton, he's got special sauce all over him. He's drowning in it, So, the thing that I do is really specific to I'm thinking that there's enough room. You and I talked, everyone doesn't know this, but, when we do these Sabian Education Networks, we do like a little pre-thing just to make sure the connection works. And, one thing we talked about a little bit was this idea, and something I didn't get to say to you last night was, I don't think it's crowded. I think we're still in the infancy. And I thought about this. I was walking my dog last night, and I thought about this, and I was thinking, how many people do we really know that have a site that does that? it would be hard pressed to sit there and go, is it 50? Probably not.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I think if we think about if we parallel this to other things, I really feel like our drumming education online is still in its infancy. And I think that there's a lot of room. I mean, let me ask you this. How many teachers do you know? 1,000?
Like personally?
Drum teachers. I think you probably have met 1,000 at PASIC and Sabian and all that stuff. So, I mean, everybody's got students. Everybody's happy. I feel like the same thing is possible with this online stuff, where I think that there's enough people out there that are hungry for knowledge of drumming, that there's room. That's why I mentioned people like the people we've mentioned, because I want them to be successful. Yeah. And I want people to be motivated to see what they do and then go, well, I want to see what Jim's doing. I want to see what other people are doing. And I really believe that there's enough room out there for a lot of people to do really well with this, because we all have the intention, as everyone here at Sabian Educational Network has, to just help people become better at their craft.
Yeah,
that's why we're here.
That's such a good outlook, and I think you're right. You know, I mean, you know, it's like artists. You know, you guys are artists, and there's people who are interested in the artist, and you know, they may not want to or be able to play every lesson on the site, but they're still going to get lots out of it. So I'm excited to see what you do, and I'm sure it's going to be great because all your educational stuff is.
I will make sure that you have supreme access to it so you can check it out, because no, it's going to be interesting. It's exciting. You know, we were messing around with these cameras, and
yeah, show us
yeah. With oh, that didn't do anything good. Let's see here. So I've got this overhead cam, and this is just a webcam right now. I've actually got a GoPro. It's going to be mounted up there, but
awesome.
So while I'm here, I guess we should talk about cymbals, huh?
Yeah. So maybe give us a tour of what you have up there on your Sabian setup.
Yeah. So just to give you guys a little bit of background, I mean, the first time I ever heard Sabians, I was listening to like Matt Chamberlain play with a local band in Denton, Texas, and he was playing hand-hammered cymbals, and I just went, oh my gosh, that sound is just unbelievable. So I've been hooked since college, and I've been officially part of the Sabian family probably since 1998. So I've always enjoyed the hand-hammered stuff, and this is a pair of 16-inch hand-hammered hats. They got a great chunk, and I'm really digging them. My crashes on this set are artisans. I like the big ones, the 18s and 19s, because they're great sounding crashes, but they're also very stable, meaning that to me, they can really take a beating. You know, for a beautiful, lush cymbal, they can take a beating at those sizes. So.
Wow, beautiful sound.
And then the ride is actually a Sabian custom shop ride. Mm-hmm. This is something that I had been really trying to find for about 10 years. It was kind of a longer story, and I think there's a little bit of a YouTube clip about it on Sabian's YouTube. But I wanted to figure out a ride cymbal that had a nice complex tone, but when you played it over and over, it didn't build up. Like, for instance, this cymbal is a crash cymbal. When I play it, and I keep playing it, it keeps building. But this ride cymbal, I mean, I'm hitting that pretty hard. And, you know, it just remains consistent. And, of course, I needed it to have a great bell. And the cymbal that you can't see over here is actually a 22-inch artisan with rivets, and you can hear the rivets.
Yeah, is that an artist in China?
22-inch artisan China.
Okay.
Which I will tell you is not as brutal as the sound of the idea of 22-inch China sounds. It's actually been a very mellow cymbal.
If it's a 22-inch China with rivets, you could like probably ride on it Mel Lewis style.
Totally. And I have. Yeah, so I love it. Yeah, there it is right there.
Oh,
so.
cool. That's great. What do you now? It's funny because the artisans, they do keep coming up, especially among like, you can, when you're playing, your rock and country stuff, you're hitting harder. And like you said, they're the most beautifully crafted cymbals I've ever played, but they're not dainty. Like they can.
No, they're not. That's the amazing thing about them. I mean, I would be on a tour with my artisans, and honestly, I mean, I'm not going to say that anything's indestructible. Let's just be realistic. Nothing's indestructible. So I'm going to be realistic about it and say, I broke a Sabian crash maybe once every 2 years in a heavy touring situation.
Right.
And by the way, Sabian's got a great warranty program for their stuff anyways. Yeah. These cymbals are years old.
Wow.
Many years old. As a matter of fact, these cymbals I played on the Back to Us record. This crash is definitely the crash I was playing, the 18 I was playing on that Back to Us record, and I toured with it before that.
Nice.
So, they're amazingly durable for the fact that they're so pretty.
When you were with Rascal Flatts and the big like stadiums and stuff, were you playing the artisans on with that, or did you have other?
I have. I've gone back and forth between two crashes. I've gone back and forth between the artisan crashes and the explosion crashes, which I'm a huge fan of.
That's like quite a different sound because those are pretty aggressive.
Yeah. But the thing I still like about the explosions is that you can tap them with your finger, and they'll crash. They don't do that thing like when we were growing up that most crashes did. You'd kind of hit it, and it would kind of gong, and then you have to hit it really hard, and then it was almost literally like the harder you hit them, the better they sounded.
Yeah,
and Sabian has moved beyond that. With the truth is they applied a lot of the things they learned from the explosion crashes to some of their other crash lines. That technology originally came from the Virgil Donetti signature crash.
Yeah, those are great. I still have the saturation crashes.
Yeah, they were fantastic. Yeah. I immediately gravitated towards those. And then at some point I said, could you ever make that in a brilliant finish? They said, yeah, we're working on something like that, and that ended up being the explosion crashes. So I go back and forth between those two because those are more the brighter thing. On this last tour that we did in 2019, I did a very muted drum sound. Like I had like heads with like two like 0 rings on them, and like the snare drum had 2 0 rings. It was tuned super low, and I wasn't playing a rim shot. So we wanted to have something that was really dark to match that. So I went back to the artisan crashes.
Oh, okay.
Loved them.
I think you made a huge point, which is like Mark Love and all the craftsmen at Sabian, like they've transcended like this cymbal. It's easy to get a real thin cymbal that's not durable to open up with a finger. But now getting the heavier ones, like I remember when I was subbing Broadway and I was doing a show with another brand of cymbals for a great drummer, and like he was breaking a lot of cymbals, so we put up heavy crashes of another brand. And I would like come in and I would literally like I would hit the crash and like I would vibrate and the cymbal would stay the way it was, But the heavier Sabian stuff, and I think actually in the new AIXs it's nice too. Because you can
what they've done is they've learned from some of the breakthroughs, like with the saturation crash, and they've taken some of that technology. It really is technology. It's artisan technology. Yeah. And I say the word artisan, as Mark Love and all the guys, I mean, there's a science to what these people are doing, and they make breakthroughs, and they can apply those things to other lines. Everything that they've learned from artisan, they're actually putting back into the hand hammered stuff.
Yeah. When with just occurring to me, like the durability, because you play hard when you play the big shows. Like, do you think like the durability of the cymbal, like of some of those artisans, like, are you like, with your technique, the way you hit them, I know is a factor. Like, are you like totally relaxed at the point of impact? Like, I assume you don't really get blisters or calluses or anything like that.
I don't. I'm pretty relaxed at the point of impact, both there and on the snare drum. I think for me that's really important.
Right.
That I'm relaxed right now, and to the point where someone could just take the stick right out of my hand. I've got a momentary squeeze there, and then I'm relaxed, and it's the same here.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah.
Little crashes. We had a nice comment about the tonal space on the crashes, which is totally true.
Yeah.
Jose, great comment. Yeah, that's interesting, because I remember I had Bobby Rock on as my guest a few months ago, and Bobby's like, obviously a very strong person. And
Roctagon.
He actually, Bobby was one of the first guys when I saw him with Nelson, probably in the 90s. I don't remember. It was a long time ago. He was into 19 and 20-inch crashes, and they were like thin. And he's like, I don't break these things because they just, wobble. And he was hitting them super hard. But I think they've taken that technology to the new level where you don't have to worry.
Well, the big crashes are kind of in. When we were growing up, it was like, dude, I got a 14-inch crash, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
And now
don't forget.
It's just not as much anymore. A lot of things have gotten bigger in general.
One of the things I love, I love change and growth. I love that, but I also love, you got something that worth stick with it. So Neil Peart's front crash was a 16 the whole time, like the one he went to, like in the front.
Yeah.
He never went away from the 16, so that's cool too. If you can, if you the 20s are more expensive, but the 16 is cool too,
Yeah, I still think that, some 20s are a work in progress, kind of challenging, the warble with the durability. I love them, but the 19s for me, this is like really my main thing. The 18s and 19s are for me, they're still really big cymbals, but they super stable. I haven't broken a cymbal in years now. It's been years.
Yeah, that's great. But everything sounds so good. So I know you do home recording, and you've been doing it for years. So like, are you engaging the same rig for the online lessons you're doing? That you're like, this sounds great. So is this your recording rig I'm hearing?
Yeah. So I've got my recording rig plugged in right now, and I'm actually, the way I'm interfacing with you is using a box called iRig Pro Duo. So that's an interface, and this is important because people are wondering, or how do you interface with your students digitally like this?
Yeah.
And so what I'm doing is I'm coming out of my Pro Tools rig, and I am in fact running Pro Tools.
Wait, right now you're running Pro Tools?
Yes. What you're hearing is actually coming out of a program that's part of my Apollos, which is just console, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's just a digital console. Oh. So I can turn stuff up and down and mute it. So the sound you're hearing right now is just from console. Oh. But what I can do is, if I want, if you guys go on my Instagram, which is, Jim Riley Music on Instagram, and you hear anything that sounds good, what I've done is I've actually gone into console And so check this out. There's me just pulling. That was just me muting. That was me muting in console, this microphone. So what I can do is I can mute all of the stuff in console and make it so all you're hearing is the stuff that's coming out of Pro Tools.
Oh.
So when you're hearing like my videos that you see on Instagram, that's actually the Pro Tools sound coming out of my Pro Tools rig and then into my phone. How do I get it there? I use this iRig Pro Duo, and it comes right. It's a box that interfaces in between my Pro Tools rig, and then it comes out with the little lightning cable into my phone, and that's how I do it.
Wait a second. So that means you don't have to like sync it up after it's done.
Never. And I won't do that, Joe. I won't do it.
That's so time consuming. I got to copy your rig.
Okay. So listen, we're here to learn stuff, right? And we want people to buy Sabian cymbals, but ultimately we want people to be better educators. And this for me has been super helpful. Yeah. The iRig Pro Duo is actually the thing I'm talking to you through, but it's also taking your stuff and bringing it back to me.
Yeah.
It's kind of a little bit of a magic box. There's a couple things I don't know how it works, but it's like a $200 box. I use it for a lot of things.
It's so funny because I've learned so many different setups like that work great. So wait a minute. So now when you're teaching and you're doing your classes though, like Zoom will hear an interface, no fuss, no muss, but Skype and stuff won't. Are you using Skype or Facebook?
I'm using Zoom.
Only Zoom.
I'm using Zoom. And then of course you're on a different thing. You're on StreamYard here. And StreamYard is pretty similar in the way that it's able to recognize. So, for example, here's let's see if you guys can hear this here. So, I'm playing on the demo for somebody so I can use,
Yeah.
So we can sit here and just go, okay, there's kick. That's just the top snare. So my philosophy with this is if I want every mic to sound great. If every mic doesn't sound great, they're not going to sound great together.
Yeah.
So, usually what I do is I start with the overhead, man. And you're looking at my overhead. Those are them right there.
Are you burying the beater?
What's that?
Are you burying the beater on the kick?
Good question. I am. And, so even like, so here's the kick. Here's my sub kick. So I've got a lot of low end there.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I'm doing that's probably interesting and of note is that, and this, I'm going to go to my overhead to show you guys this. I know we're a little bit off of our topic, but we're learning some stuff.
No,
so that's
great. Yeah. This, if anybody's opposed to this, you can let me know. But I don't think anybody's opposed to this.
So interesting. As you can see, I use kind of what a lot of people are referring to as the ergonomic setup, where
your bass drum sideways.
Where what?
Your bass drum's like on an angle.
No, it's not. No, it's not, Joe. I'm facing the back wall. I'm facing the wall.
Right.
Not my bass drum.
Yeah,
so let's get this clear. My drum set's facing forward. Now the bass drum is off to the side because my foot goes to the side, as does this one.
Yeah.
And so if there was a drum that was at the center of the drum set, it's the snare drum.
Yes.
So if you were going to play a concert on just a snare drum, you would set up the snare drum and you'd face forward.
Yeah.
Then if somebody asked you to put a bass drum, well, now you've already set your snare drum, so you'd have to put your bass drum. So the problem with putting your bass drum forward, in my opinion, is that has you looking off stage.
Yes.
So having said all of that, what's interesting is this is not actually the center of the audio part of my drum set. The center is more here because I'm trying to go between the snare drum and the bass drum I want the snare drum and the bass drum in the center. So my overheads are actually up here.
Ah.
So yeah, pretty interesting. Like the playing center of my kit is here, but the audio center of my kit is here.
And you have the I always wondered, you have this thing going on, right? Like what, right, with the overheads?
The XY thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, so another great question, and it applies in a lot of ways. So when you have, if you take your crash cymbal and you put a mic over that one, you take a crash cymbal and you put it over that one. Then you take those microphones and you spread them out hard left and right. What happens is you get this thing where you're playing, and then the crash sounds like it's in Timbuktu, right? And then that crash sounds like it's in another side of the world over there. So what this does, and this is weird, this one is actually catching that side. This one's catching that side. So technically, the one that catches the left side of my kit is on the right. The one that catches the right side of my kit is on the left. Doing that. And what it does is it gives you a much closer, tighter, more realistic version of your kit rather than one that sounds like,
I see.
It sounds more like here.
Yeah.
Like yeah. And then like from a producer standpoint, then I could take things like acoustics and hard pan them way out. And so the drum set's in here, acoustics are way out here, vocals here. Now we're starting to leave sonic space for everything. But
you still get enough of a stereo image of the kit to know.
It's a huge stereo image, but it's not unrealistic.
Yeah. Do you like it? This is not even relevant to SEN, but do you like drummer's perspective or audience perspective?
Great question. So when if anyone ever looks up anything like I just did the Modern Drummer Festival.
Yes.
And that was a huge honor to be involved with that. And by the way, if you guys get a chance, go stream it. It's it's amazing. And the drummers were all phenomenal on it. Yep. But what's really funny, what a lot of people, and I brought this up to Dave Frangioni before he booked me on this, I said, just so you know, technically I did the last Modern Drummer Festival. So you're asking me to do 2 in a row.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
2011, right? So 2011, I did the last live Modern Drummer Festival. And then 2020, I did the next Modern Drummer Festival. But
you're the only guy who's done 2 in a row. That means.
Yeah, exactly. I said, you realize you're asking me to do 2 in a row.
I've asked you about drummer's perspective.
Yeah. So on the 2011, thank you for bringing me back. So on the 2011 thing, what they did was they had 2 rooms. They had a little room and they had a big room. And the little room was considered more of a masterclass room, and the big room was considered more of a clinic room, even though they were really kind of the same thing, just in 2 different venues. So there were 2 things that were interesting about it. The first thing is they decided to put Jim Riley and John Riley in the same room together.
I love that because I love both of you guys. So
I know. Me too. Me too. So that was fun and funny because we're really a big juxtaposition in styles. And the second thing is the main room actually didn't have a front camera. Excuse me. The masterclass room that I was in did not have a front camera. There were only sides. So when they did the mix the first time, I said, wait a second. You're playing me the mix back, and it's from the audience perspective, but you never show the audience's perspective in my room.
Interesting.
So I asked them to reverse to the drummer's perspective so that it would match what you were seeing. And if you look up a clip of me playing on Modern Drummer Festival 2011, you'll notice that it is mixed in the drummer's perspective. Having said that, if I'm mixing a record, I'm mixing it in drummer's perspective. If I'm mixing a television show that has an audience perspective as the dominant perspective, then I will mix it from the audience's perspective.
Oh, wow, that's a great answer. I was wondering about this too. Hey, Jeff, thanks for bringing this up. Jeff says that your overhead thing is good at helping with the mics being out of phase.
Yeah, I'm still learning more about that. like I don't know as much about overheads being out of phase. One thing I've learned how to do is to check if my 2 kick mics or my 2 snare mics are in phase. Because what happens is you turn your bass drum up in the mix and it doesn't really help. And then you turn it up more and it still doesn't help. And you're like, what's going on? And it's because the 2 they're knocking heads and they're canceling each other out.
Right.
So physically seeing that the waves are together is super important. And it's stuff, this is all stuff that I'm trying to get better and better at. And so like if you watch that Modern Drummer Festival thing that I just did that I recorded in here, the audio is my audio from here. It's just what I mixed.
That's great. Well, we've been on here for an hour, but can I keep you for 5 more minutes?
Yes.
Okay. So this was fun. I did this with Rich, and it seemed I never really did this before, but I don't even actually know who were your favorite drummers, like when you were starting out.
Okay, when I was starting out, the drummer that inspired me to actually pick up the sticks, because I knew I wanted to be a rock star when I was a little kid. I mean, seriously, I was like 6 years old. I already had that job picked out. So the person who actually inspired me to pick up sticks specifically was Peter Criss.
Wow, okay.
I saw a commercial for Kiss Alive 2, and I just saw that and I've rewatched it since. I saw that riser, like rising up into the air, and that cat, under him. And then they show the drums, and it's just drums from here to here. And I'm going, that's the job I want. That's what I want to do. The person that really inspired me to jump to another level and to really work on my craft was actually Neil Peart.
Okay.
Then, if you cut to college, that's when it kind of became a little bit more of Vinnie Colaiuta, Dave Weckl, Trelock Gertu, Manu Katché, and then, like really embracing people like Phil Collins for what he was doing, and checking out the Genesis stuff with Chester and Phil, and it just goes on from there. I mean, I'm still constantly inspired. I'm inspired by people I went to school with. Even people like Ari Honig and Keith Carlock. Keith and I marched in the drum line together at North Texas.
Yeah. Well, that's an amazing group of people to be in school together. I mean, all of you are just ridiculous.
Yeah. Sutter.
Yeah. We talked about him too. I wish he played Sabian. I'd have him on here. All of them.
Yeah, I know. Well, he did. He went to the dark side. I've never forgiven him for that.
Well, as we learned from Star Wars, you can come back.
Exactly. There can be a redemption story.
So here's the rapid fire thing, okay? And I think I'm going to do this more often. Okay, I say their name. You just check. Maybe people have never really delved into these drummers. So personal favorites, just say one track. Phil Collins.
Okay. Abacab.
Awesome. Great choice. Vocal.
Yeah, I actually knew what it was. I had to remember what the name was. I wasn't trying to think about what the track was. I was trying to remember the name. So I had to go, I was like, oh yeah, Abacab. Yeah, okay, Abacab.
Neil Peart.
That one I'm actually actively thinking about. Subdivisions.
Oh, wow. The song that made me want to be a drummer. There you go. Vinny.
Probably the 7 Days.
Oh, good choice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Dave Weckl.
Got a Match.
Yeah, that's what I would say too.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of an easy one, He's got great ones, but it's just the insanity is just so ridiculous.
Actually, you know what? If you ask me what, I might say there's a song on Michelle Camilo's Rendezvous called Tropical Jam. The first,
yeah,
that would be mine. Anyway,
yeah, it's really, really, really good.
And then last but not one last person, Manu Katché.
Probably Your Eyes, you know, but definitely, you know, Red Rain, which with an honorable mention for Murata.
Wait, on Red Rain, didn't Stuart Copeland play hi-hat on that?
He did.
Right.
He did. There's a lot of stuff going on in there.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, he played just hi-hat.
Right.
And then they actually switch from Manu to Murata at one point.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting. And I'll really blow your mind and say, you know, with Steve Gadd, it's probably actually quartet 1 from 3 quartets.
Oh, that record is just.
Yeah.
If you guys haven't heard 3 quartets, check it out. And you know, I heard that when I was pretty young. I didn't realize that it's Chick playing drums on Confirmation on the last track on that.
That's cool.
It's Chick and Brecker playing duo. So like.
Yeah.
You know, we have that royalty ride with Chick, you know, with Sabian, but Chick could play serious drums. Oh, I lost my train of thought. You said something else.
Well, no, we were just talking about that. You said check that record out, and that, you know, that record being important to you when you were a kid. And what was interesting for me when I was a kid was somebody showed me that record when I was in high school, and I rejected it.
Oh.
I couldn't understand it. I pushed it away. I said, This does not make me happy listening to this. I don't like this.
Right.
And then I got to college and revisited it, and I went, oh, wow, this is really something. And, you know, of course, in college, honorable mention goes to the great Chad Smith. Huge fan of everything. And I was right in that era, you know, listening to Chad and absorbing everything. He's another person that I sat and just played with his records for hours.
He's such one of the all-time greats of group. A lot of people, well, Mark Giuliano will admit, you know, I taught Mark when he was like, his first favorite drummer was Chad, and he was like addicted to him. And yeah, Chad's great, and he's another great Sabian player. You know what's funny? I was thinking about that, the crazy trivia with Stuart on the Peter Gabriel thing. I had Billy Cobham on a couple weeks ago, and on that Last Temptation of Christ album, the Martin Scorsese film, that Peter Gabriel did the soundtrack, and Cobham plays octobans on that. Like you go through that.
Amazing.
Anyway, whatever. And since everyone knows how much I love Neil, I was actually listening to Signals on my way home from a actual gig the other night. And I've decided that my current 2 favorite, most inspiring Rush tunes are Losing It and Countdown. Those are
Oh, I love Countdown. I love Countdown.
That's a masterpiece.
And another drummer that really super inspired me that I love to steal a lot of things from was Tony Williams.
Of course, yeah.
There's a lick that I really love. There's 2 licks that I stole from him. That one and the one I used in Modern Drummer Festival, which is this. Which is right, left bass, left, right bass.
Oh, man. This is great.
Yeah, so those are stolen from the master.
Jim, I got to say, Jim, you delivered it all today. Tony licks, Sabian product demo, education. No, really, really appreciate it, man.
Well, I'm as always, it's a huge honor just to be part of the Sabian family. And just remember, you know, people always talk about endorsements and all that stuff, but the most important endorsements out there are your endorsements. The people out there that are playing this stuff that are not being compensated in any way. We all endorse products. That's the thing that people don't understand. And your endorsement is literally like the most important one because no one's asking you to do it. So when you tell people, hey, you know, man, I'm playing this Artisan Crash and it's, you know, it's the best, you know, that's the most important stuff out there. But for me to be involved with Sabian, as I have been actively since, you know, 1998, when Bobby Booze signed me onto the roster, you know, it's always been an honor to be part of the Sabian family in the capacity that I've been able to do. And I'm always honored to be a guest on Sabian Education Network with you because, I mean, you and I, we go way back in all this stuff, and we've got a lot of the same passions. We love gear. We love playing drums. We love teaching. And so it's always really fun to catch up with you and spend some time with the Sabian Education Network.
Thanks, Jim. We're so lucky to do what we do. And the fact that Sabian has given us this network and, me the opportunity for us to be live together and talk and inspire each other and everybody here watching. It's really hard in the industry right now. I'm sure everyone realizes that, and a lot of our friends are going through it. We're going through it. Sabian could have easily just pulled the plug on SEN.
Now's when it's needed most.
Yep, but Sabian has not done that. They've kept me empowered to keep it going, and we're fortunate to have that. And just personally to you, man, I mean, you're a great friend. I always love having you on. I know I can count on you to be a great guest and to just be not only fun but informative. And don't go anywhere because I'll be calling on you again.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Well, Joe and I, we talk outside of the Sabian Education Network as well. I mean, because we're both colleagues in this business, and it's great to have people that you work with, like we are working together, that you enjoy outside of this setting. Being friends makes it that much more fun to do when we get to stop by and share all this time with our friends at Sabian Education Network. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in with us, man. This was a real blast.
Jim, thanks for doing it. Really appreciate it. All you guys, thanks again for being here. Keep tuning in every Thursday and Friday. Dom's back Thursday at 2. I'll be back here next week. I have my book here. I can tell you who's my guest next week. Hang on a second. Stand by. Randy Black is going to be on next week, who's teaching in Germany and has done a lot of touring. I'm really excited to have Randy as my guest. So, Jim, thanks again. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Have a great weekend. We'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.